There are moments in life, Libra, when you are no longer standing at a crossroads. You are standing at the end of the road. Not an ending born from failure, but an ending that comes from having walked far enough, long enough, and carried enough weight to finally know you do not need to take another step just to prove something. This is where you are now. A real ending. No more feeling stuck in between. No more whispering to yourself, just a little longer, just one more try. Instead, there is a strange kind of clarity, soft but unmistakably final. You can feel it in your breath, in the way you look back at things that once kept you awake for years and notice they no longer press against your chest the same way. Not because they didn't matter, but because you carried them long enough. There were responsibilities, relationships, unnamed worries that once clung to you like part of your identity. And now you understand something deeply important. You do not have to carry all of it forward to prove who you are. You are not running away. You are simply placing them down. What surprises people most about you right now is your calm. You are no longer rushing to fix everything, no longer trying to please everyone, no longer afraid that if you stop, everything will collapse. You have seen enough collapses to know the truth. Real stability does not come from holding on tighter. It comes from knowing when to let go. And you are doing that with a rare kind of maturity. You no longer delay because you see now that delay is often just a quiet way of avoiding the truth. And you are no longer distracted because your mind has stopped searching for answers outside of yourself. Everything you needed to know was always there. You simply weren't ready to listen. Now you are. You hear it clearly. That some things must be closed, not to erase the past, but to return it to its rightful place in your story. The most beautiful part is this. You are no longer afraid of the outcome. Not because you believe everything will be perfect, but because you know you can move forward no matter what the result is. You once believed that closing a door meant losing something precious. Now you see it differently. What you are about to receive is space. Space to breathe. Space to live. Space to choose with honesty. And that is a gift greater than any promise. There is a quiet preparation happening within you. No noise, no display. Just the feeling that you no longer need to explain yourself to the world. You trust your intuition more now. You trust the wisdom earned through time, through tears, through very long nights. You know the road ahead is not easier, but it is truer. And that is enough to keep you walking forward without looking back. As you stand here, between what has ended and what is beginning, a gentle light starts to appear. It does not blind you. It does not force you. It simply allows you to see what was once unclear. You begin to understand that this clarity does more than help you close a chapter. It opens a completely new way of seeing yourself. Lighter, more honest, full of possibility. And then, in that quiet stillness, when everything has been set down where it belongs, a strange feeling arrives. As if the rhythm of life is changing, not faster, not slower, just different. You do not need to act yet. You only need to be here, to feel the subtle movement spreading from within, like a warm wave, signaling that the choices ahead will no longer be guided by fear, but by the truth you have finally touched. That truth does not arrive like a hard order. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It comes quietly. Like the moment before sunrise, when the sun has not fully risen yet, but the sky has already changed color. You begin to realize that the things which once exhausted you were not exhausting because they were too difficult. They were exhausting because you were trying to see them through eyes that no longer fit who you had become. There were old beliefs, old hopes, old stories you kept telling yourself so you could stay, so you could endure, so you could keep waiting. Now, they dissolve gently. No pain, no regret, simply no longer necessary. You see more clearly how often you used to doubt your own feelings. You questioned whether you were too sensitive, too demanding, whether you were making things bigger than they really were. And then, a very quiet moment arrives. A moment where you understand something deeply true. Your intuition was never wrong. You just were not safe enough to trust it before. Now, you are. You no longer need to convince anyone. You no longer need to justify yourself. This clarity does not come from life becoming perfect. It comes from no longer denying what you truly feel. There is a strange sensation when illusions fall away. It does not feel like loss. It feels like space, like stepping out of a dark room you have been in for too long. At first, the light makes you squint, but very quickly, you feel relief so deep you wonder how you stayed there for so long. You look back at relationships, at choices, at crossroads that once made you hesitate. And for the first time, you no longer need to give them beautiful names, just to accept them. You see them exactly as they are, staying or leaving, continuing or closing. These are no longer questions wrapped in guilt. You are not choosing out of fear of loss. You are not choosing out of fear of loneliness. You are choosing because you know what drains you and what nourishes you. This is a very mature kind of freedom, not impulsive, not extreme, but steady. A freedom that does not need to be proven, does not need to be announced. It only needs to be lived. You begin to notice that emotions no longer drive you, they guide you. When you feel sadness, you no longer push it away. When you feel joy, you no longer question how long it will last. Everything returns to its rightful place. And within this new balance, you feel more grounded even though not much has changed on the outside. The biggest shift has happened within you, where you no longer deceive yourself into believing that if you endure just a little longer, everything will somehow change. There are decisions you do not need to make yet, but you know with certainty that you will not return to what you have already outgrown, not out of resentment, but out of clarity about your own worth. You understand that every choice you make from now on shapes not only your present, but the way you honor yourself in the future. And that respect begins with no longer betraying your true feelings. In this quiet space, where everything is seen directly, without decoration, without avoidance, you feel a deep sense of stability. Not the certainty of knowing what will happen next, but the peace of knowing that whatever happens, you will choose yourself. And from that place, a new current begins to form quietly, carrying encounters, words, moments you never expected, arriving exactly when you are clear enough, present enough, and wise enough to recognize their true value, and you do not need to search for that current. It finds you naturally, as if everything had been arranged long ago, simply waiting for you to stand in the right place. Within that quiet shift, a particular moment appears, not loudly, not with warning, just a conversation. It may happen in real life, or it may unfold during a very quiet evening when you are alone. But somehow, it reaches straight into the deepest part of you. Not many words are exchanged, yet every word carries weight. Not because someone is trying to convince you, but because you are finally ready to listen. Simple questions are asked, nothing complicated, and still, they make you pause longer than usual. In the silence between those questions, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly, no longer mixed with other people's expectations, no longer blurred by the fear of disappointing someone. What remains is a very pure truth about what you need and what you can no longer carry with you. You realize how familiar you have become with carrying responsibility for the emotions of so many others, keeping the peace, maintaining balance, holding everything together, even when it meant stepping away from yourself. But in this conversation, whether it is with another person or simply with yourself, one truth becomes undeniable. Your happiness cannot continue to live in someone else's hands. It cannot depend on how well someone understands you or how the world responds to you. It is something you must claim, protect, and choose every single day. A quiet kind of courage rises when you reach that awareness. Not explosive, not dramatic, just the feeling of standing a little straighter, breathing a little deeper, and no longer needing permission to live honestly as yourself. You see clearly now that if change is required, you will not turn away. Not because you want to destroy everything, but because you no longer accept sacrificing yourself to preserve what no longer fits. That conversation, whether brief or long, leaves a very particular echo within you, as if someone has placed a new compass in your hand, not only to show direction, but to remind you that you have the right to choose your own path. When you step away from that moment, you do not carry confusion. You carry a gentle clarity, The clarity that you do not need to wait for everything to be perfect before you move. The clarity that change is no longer something to fear, but an act of self-respect. From that point on, the way you look at life begins to shift. You stop asking whether you're good enough and begin asking whether something truly nourishes you. Within that subtle transition, you feel the rhythm of your life begin to change, as if an inner door has quietly opened, allowing light to enter, allowing air to move, and allowing you to step forward with more intention, more steadiness, ready for the movements ahead that are already beginning to gather speed around you. And then you begin to notice something else. When clarity has fully settled inside you, the outside world starts responding in a very different way, not through loud disruptions, not through dramatic events, but through a quicker rhythm of life itself, as if everything that had been waiting for you suddenly begins to move at once. Your days no longer pass with a sense of heaviness or repetition. They have rhythm, they have flow, they have breath. You wake up with the feeling that you need to be somewhere, that something is asking to be completed, not out of obligation, but because the life within you wants to move. Your schedule begins to fill, but not in a way that drains you. This is a kind of busyness that carries vitality. Even the smallest task reminds you that you are participating in your own life, not standing on the sidelines watching it pass. New meetings appear, unexpected invitations arrive. Ideas that once felt delayed suddenly find the right moment to begin. You do not have to chase them. They come close enough for you to step forward with a very natural sense of initiative. What is interesting is that as life speeds up, old stories quietly fall behind without any battle at all. The dramas that once occupied so much mental space no longer have a place to live. Not because they were fully resolved, but because you no longer have the energy to keep feeding them. You have chosen to give your attention to what is growing rather than what has already run dry, and that choice, though very quiet, creates a deep shift. You begin to rediscover the joy of being busy with things that matter, a meeting that makes you laugh more than usual, a project that makes you lose track of time, a very ordinary moment, yet powerful enough to remind you that you are still alive, still feeling, still surrounded by possibilities waiting to be explored. There is a mature kind of excitement moving through you now, not impulsive, not restless, but the quiet eagerness of someone who knows they are moving in the right direction. Within this movement, you also learn to listen more carefully to your body and your emotions. When you're tired, you pause without judging yourself. When you're happy, you allow yourself to enjoy it without worrying about how long it will last. This new balance allows you to move faster without losing yourself. You no longer have to choose between moving forward and protecting your inner world. The two now walk side by side, supporting each other. There are days when you notice you are smiling more than usual, smiling at a passing comment, at a sudden memory, at the feeling that life, at last, is working with you. You no longer need everything to be perfect to feel fulfilled. You only need the sense that you are in motion, that you are involved, that you are present inside your own story. And that feeling brings a kind of motivation that is real and lasting. As you continue walking in this new rhythm, something subtle unfolds beneath the surface. You begin attracting experiences that reflect who you are becoming. The people you meet, the conversations you have, carry more depth, less avoidance, fewer masks, just genuine presence, enough for you to feel seen and truly heard. And then, in a very ordinary moment, while you are busy with new beginnings, while life energy moves through every action, a familiar stillness returns. Not to slow you down, but to remind you that all movement begins within. That even as your steps grow quicker, there is a steady heartbeat quietly guiding you. And it is that heartbeat that leads you to the words that need to be spoken, the meetings that need to happen, the decisions that need to be made, at exactly the moment you are ready to be honest with yourself. And as that heartbeat steadies, you begin to notice another layer of sound around you. Not the sound of action, but the sound of words, whispers. Stories passed quietly from one person to another, information not yet fully formed, hanging in the air of the spaces where you live and work. They do not arrive directly. They slip in subtly, through someone's glance, through half-finished sentences, through the feeling that something is being spoken, but not yet completely said. Before, you might have been pulled into movements like this, questioning, analyzing, worrying, sometimes reacting too quickly just to feel a sense of control. But now, something has changed. A calm maturity holds you in place. You listen, but you do not rush to believe. You notice, but you do not rush to conclude. You allow things to exist without needing to intervene right away. And that steadiness creates a necessary distance between you and what is still unclear. You begin to understand that not all information requires a response, and not every conversation needs your presence. Some stories dissolve on their own when they are no longer fed by attention. Some rumors only carry power when people rush to believe them. You are not stepping back out of fear. You are stepping back because you have learned the value of observation. Observing who is speaking, where they are speaking from, and why. Observing so you do not place yourself inside unnecessary storms. In that quiet space, you feel your boundaries more clearly than ever before. You no longer need to explain why you are not participating. You no longer need to prove whether you are right or wrong. You simply remain where you are, steady. Like someone who understands that truth does not need to be dragged into the light by urgency. Truth has its own rhythm, and that rhythm is never late. There may be moments when you feel slightly removed from the center of conversation, but that feeling is quickly replaced by a deep sense of relief. You realize how much energy you have saved by not reacting on instinct. That energy now goes to what truly matters: long terms, goals, genuine relationships, decisions that require clarity, not emotion. You also begin to notice something else. When you do not jump in, when you do not correct, when you do not defend, things reveal themselves naturally. Details that were once hidden start to surface. Scattered pieces find their place, not because you forced them together, but because the picture was ready to be seen. And in that moment, you understand why waiting mattered, not to endure, but to see the whole view. This kind of waiting is not passive. It is a very refined form of action. Choosing to stay outside when needed, choosing not to let other people's emotions direct your behavior, choosing to trust that you will know what to do when the moment arrives. And when the truth is finally confirmed, it does not shock you. It simply makes sense, as if everything has finally spoken in a language you were already prepared to understand. In that moment, you no longer feel rushed to move forward or to stop. You feel yourself standing on solid ground. Every choice from here on comes from understanding, not rumor, from awareness, not reaction. And from that awareness, another door opens quietly, not with noise, but with a familiar feeling, like the moment you realize that certain meetings, certain connections are already making their way toward you, carrying a completely different quality, deeper, truer, arriving precisely when you are calm enough, clear enough, and open enough to receive them. And before you even have time to name that feeling, it is already there, clearly present. No display, no warning, just a gentle touch on your life, enough to make you pause for a moment. It may be someone's gaze lingering a little longer than usual. It may be an offhand remark that echoes far longer than expected. Or it may simply be a strange sense of familiarity, as if you have known this person before, as if you have crossed this energy once already at some distant point in time. Quietly you ask yourself if this is real, not because you doubt it, but because it feels so different from anything you have known before. It does not ask you to become someone else. It does not demand that you prove your worth. It arrives with a rare sense of ease, as if simply being present together is already enough. And within that fullness, you realize something profound. You are being seen, not on the surface, but at a deeper level, the part of you you usually keep protected. For some, this connection carries the rhythm of the heart, not rushed, not overwhelming, but warm and steady. It is not built on grand promises, but on the quiet safety of being yourself. A closeness where words are not always necessary, because the silence between you already holds meaning. And in that moment, you understand that deep connection does not always arrive through intensity. Sometimes it arrives through peace. For others, this is not a story of romance, but something far more unusual, an intellectual bond, a spiritual alignment, a shared way of seeing life. Someone steps into your world and suddenly you see your own path more clearly, not to lead you, but to reflect you, to remind you of values you once held close, of dreams you set aside because you believed they were unrealistic. This kind of difference does not confuse you. It awakens you. What matters most is that you do not force this connection into a familiar shape. You allow it to be what it is, to grow at its own pace. And in that absence of pressure, a rare kind of space is created, a space where both of you can breathe, can grow, can change, without the fear of being left behind. You begin to understand that destined encounters are not meant to disrupt your life, but to restore order within you. There is a clear sense that this meeting did not come to fill a void, but to arrive when you are already full. Not to rescue you, but to walk beside you. You are no longer searching for completion in another person. You are simply sharing your journey with someone who can walk alongside you, each of you holding your own rhythm, yet moving toward a shared truth. And in that shared movement, you feel stronger without becoming rigid. As this connection slowly takes form, you do not rush to label it. You do not rush to define it. You allow time to do its work, because you have learned that what truly matters does not need to be forced. It finds its own way to endure when held with respect and awareness. And within that patience, you feel a gentle expansion inside yourself, as if another door has quietly opened. Not to step into someone else's world, but to allow your own world to be reflected more clearly. In that soft light, you understand that destiny is not something imposed from the outside. It is a meeting that happens when you have walked far enough on your path, when you have learned to listen, to wait, to trust the rhythm of life. And as you continue forward carrying this very real sense of connection, you are not just carrying a person or a relationship. You are carrying the quiet confidence that you are in the right place at the right time, ready for deeper movements that are already beginning to take shape ahead. And from that feeling of being exactly where you belong, you begin to stand a little taller without effort. Not the kind of strength that comes from bracing yourself, but a steadiness that feels natural. Like knowing, without looking down, the weight of your body resting firmly on the ground. You no longer speak in order to be approved of. Yet, when you do speak, your words carry weight. Not because you are louder, but because you no longer doubt the value of what you have to say. There is a calm in your voice, a certainty in your eyes, and others listen, almost without realizing why. You begin to see that you are stepping into a different position now. Not a position that was given to you, but one you have reclaimed. Reclaiming the right to decide what deserves your time and energy. Reclaiming the right to say no without over-explaining. Reclaiming responsibility for your own life in a more mature way. You are no longer avoiding responsibility, but you are no longer carrying everything either. You choose. And that choice itself is the clearest expression of personal power. As your energy shifts, the space around you changes with it. People who once overlooked you begin to notice your presence. Connections that were interrupted, that faded into silence, reappear unexpectedly, in very different forms. A short message, a chance encounter, a simple check-in that somehow carries far more meaning than it seems. You are not surprised. You are not quick to celebrate. You observe. You feel what truly resonates with who you are now. What matters is that you no longer open doors out of habit or nostalgia. You open them because you are ready. Ready to engage from a more equal place. Ready to set boundaries without guilt. Ready to welcome connections that can grow alongside you rather than pull you back into old roles. You understand that not everyone who returns is meant to stay, and not every return needs to continue. This clarity keeps your heart open, but not unguarded. Something very beautiful happens during this time. You begin attracting people who reflect the energy you now carry, people who respect your space, people who do not require you to shrink yourself to fit, people who can stand beside you without feeling threatened by your light. And you are no longer afraid of your own light either. You allow yourself to shine, not to compete, not to dominate, but to live honestly. The responsibilities you carry now no longer feel like burdens. They feel like trust. Trust that you can handle what is coming. Trust that you can make decisions even without seeing the entire road ahead. Trust that if adjustments are needed, you will make them without turning against yourself. Your personal power does not come from controlling everything. It comes from the ability to adjust while staying rooted in who you are. And as you continue forward with this quiet strength, one truth becomes very clear. The doors that once closed are no longer symbols of loss. They are simply doors that completed their purpose. The doors opening now do not need to resemble anything you have known before. They open because you have changed, because you are strong enough to step through without losing yourself. And in that stillness, rich with inner power, you feel guided, not by circumstances, not by outside forces, but by a deep trust in the person you are becoming. And then, when you no longer feel the need to prove that you are on the right path, that sense of rightness begins to spread quietly through every part of your life. Not as a dramatic breakthrough, but as a very subtle fulfillment. You realize you are standing in a season where the pieces are finally finding their place, not perfect in an ideal sense, but fitting in a way that gently calms your heart. You stop asking whether you missed something along the way, because what is staying with you now carries a quality that feels real and true. There are unexpected moments opening inside the space of your heart, not the kind that throws you off balance, but moments so warm you have to pause just to feel them. Care arriving from places you did not anticipate, small gestures that reach deeper than expected, a relationship, new or familiar, suddenly seen in a different light. You are no longer searching to be filled. You simply open yourself to resonance. And within that resonance, you feel loved in a way that does not require you to shrink. Alongside these emotions, a steady current begins to form in your material world. Not rushed, not promising sudden leaps, but solid. You can see the results of the clear, grounded choices you have made. Efforts once carried quietly are beginning to show their return. Each step forward, no matter how small, brings a sense of security. You are no longer chasing the feeling of having enough. You are building it, slowly, patiently, by honoring your own rhythm. What becomes most precious is the sense of peace, slowly turning into a familiar state. You no longer strain to keep everything balanced. That balance comes from knowing where you belong. You know when to move forward. You know when to rest. You stop comparing your journey to anyone else's because you clearly see the value of your own path. And somehow, life no longer feels like a series of obstacles to overcome. It becomes a space to experience, to learn, and to enjoy. There is a very quiet moment when you look around and realize you no longer feel lost inside your own life. What once made you question your choices now stands as proof that you were brave enough to choose differently. You did not defeat anyone. You only overcame the fear that once kept you still. And that victory brings a freedom that is deep and lasting. You understand now that you were not brought here by accident. Every decision, every release, every moment you chose truth over comfort, all of it led you to this place. And when you look back, you feel no regret, only gratitude. Gratitude for not turning around, for trusting your own knowing, even when the road ahead was unclear. In that quiet settling, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. You are not alone. Not in the sense that someone is always beside you, but in the sense that you are being supported by your own choices. As if every step you take is met with a gentle alignment. No force, no pressure, just companionship. And you know with deep certainty that the path you are walking now is not only right for who you are today, but is opening a future where you can continue to grow, to love more deeply, to live more fully, and to receive what truly belongs to the person you have become.